it's so good to be with you, friends, and welcome as you join us for another informative show. Our guest speaker this evening is Barry Neufeld, and the title of tonight's show is A Warrior's Call to Men, Rise Up. It's December 10th, 2025, and this is the Empower Hour. Action for Canada is a national movement reaching out to millions of Canadians and uniting our voices in opposition to the destructive policies tearing at the fabric of our nation. Through call to action campaigns, we educate, equip, mobilize, and empower citizens to take action. We are committed to protecting faith, family, and freedom. It's critical that parents become well educated on what children are being exposed to in the publicly funded education system. And tonight, we'd like to invite you to check out the Parent Resources page on our website. Our innocent and vulnerable children and youth are being indoctrinated by radical ideologies in schools, through television, and on social media. Here at Action for Canada, we have an abundance of information, resources, presentations, and webinars to help you stand up and protect your children from this evil agenda. Be sure to head over to our website today. If this is your first time joining us, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Tanya, the founder and leader of Action for Canada. Tanya and the Action for Canada team are committed to bringing public awareness to the many serious issues facing our nation, including tonight's call of action to stand up for and protect the innocence of our children. Will you all please help me welcome Tanya Gaw. Hello, Tanya.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for that. I truly am looking forward to the show tonight and to have Barry on. I met Barry back in 2017, and as I've mentioned many times, that's when SOGI 123 was coming in hot and heavy into the school system in British Columbia. It is known by other names across the country, like, for instance, in Ontario, it's known as the WIN Sex Ed, and internationally, it comes down from the World Health Organization. The United Nations is behind this, and it's known as Comprehensive Sexuality Education. It's meant to sexualize children at the earliest age possible. And that's exactly what's been unfolding in this last decade. And Barry happened to be one of the ones on the front line of this battle, and he continues to be. So we're going to look forward to his testimony tonight and having a good conversation. But first, I want to address Bill C9, and I want to thank all of our members so much for taking action. It's had a huge impact. This battle is not over. And so I just want to give a bit of an update. So yesterday on December 9th, it was an 8-hour clause by clause review at the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. They call that Just and Justice. It's anything but. What they're doing in Bill C9, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely criminal, and it violates so many sections of our charter. But anyways, the Liberals voted in favor of the Bloc Québécois amendment to remove the good faith religious exemption from the criminal code's hate speech provisions. So what this does is this is going to secure the Bloc support for the bill in the minority parliament, despite conservative opposition and concerns from Christian leaders and groups over the potential impacts on scriptural expression. Because as we know, one of the ones, and it was Mark Miller, who claims to be a Christian, was stating several Bible verses that address homosexuality, sexual promiscuity, and that they basically want to criminalize this, but he referred to the Bible. As a Christian, he refers to the Bible as hate speech. And I don't know what Bible he's reading, but it's certainly not the same one that I'm reading. So the amendment was not part of the original draft, and there was no witnesses testified on it due to prior meeting cancellations, which was last Thursday. And like I say, we only found out on late Monday night that they were going to be having this 8-hour meeting yesterday. And so people were calling and lobbying all day. And I was in a meeting with a group of over 900 pastors and church leaders and other leaders yesterday morning. And everybody was coming together to lobby the government and to call their elected representatives. but Justice Minister Sean Fraser stated the change won't target religious texts and that it will just strengthen hate crime tools. But I just, none of us are going to fall for that. We believe this is a lie and that it will indeed lead to the further persecution of Christians in Canada, especially when these activist groups or individuals start claiming harm and victimhood. And the case then goes before activist politicians, judges, and human rights tribunals. We are already witnessing this across Canada. So Bill C-9 is really the nail in the coffin. And another question I have, because they're not just looking at it as text from scripture. They're also saying that this is in response to the hate being spewed in our streets. So my question to ask is that if this is really about addressing the increase in hate on our streets and the rise of anti-Semitism, then why aren't they just instead taking steps to ban the Quran? Because we know when they're talking about hate on our streets right now, they're talking about the Palestinians and the Muslims coming out en masse, blocking our streets, making anti-Semitic statements, making hate statements towards whether Canada and the United States. So across the board, I think that would be more practical than trying to go after the Bible, considering that Canada is a Christian nation. Everything that we have, like our laws, are based on biblical, our Magna Carta, for instance, and our laws are based on the biblical principles. And so where does this leave Bill C-9 from here? It remains in the House because yesterday, I mean, I don't know how you guys felt when you were hearing this morning about the fact that they had come together and the Liberals actually supported the bloc. But I was feeling a little wiped out this morning as like, how do we continue? Like, where does this go from here? And then looking into it, it hasn't gone past third reading. It still remains in the House right now. It has to go through more amendments and debates and get voted, like I say, into third reading. And then from there, possibly maybe the Conservatives could do a filibuster or stall it. But either way, we can look forward to this, coming up in January. And if it does pass in the House, it moves to first reading, then full Senate review, debates, again, possible amendments. But the Senate could amend or delay it, but government bills often pass with tweaks. And as we have witnessed now for a decade, the Senate is no longer the chamber of sober second thought, but an appointed arm of the Liberal Marxist Party. Royal assent follows Senate approval, effective 30 days later. And this is going to be an interesting one. So potentially it could become law by the spring of 2026, but that depends on the continued amount of backlash. So like I say, we're not done with this. I've posted on my Twitter page this morning on social media, and I've quoted section 52.1 of the Constitution, abbreviated, says that if any bill is in violation of the Constitution, it's of no force or effect. So as well, when this bill gets as far as going to royal assent, the Governor General would then have to sign on to that. So that's Ms. Mary Simon, Governor Mary Simon. So she will be faced with quite a conundrum as far as I'm concerned, because she is bound by her oath to the King, and the King's oath is to govern Canada according to the Protestant Christian faith. So the Governor General does not have greater power than the King and therefore must protect our Christian heritage. And so that's why I say it's quite a conundrum. What will she do as far as her oath and her loyalties are concerned? And so I say, just make no mistake, this is the very reason that this Bill C-9 exists. It is a targeted attack against Christianity because the government wants the people to worship and obey them, and it's just not going to happen. Whether Bill C-9 passes or not, it's an age-old problem, and history is repeating itself. When a tyrannical government tries to oppress Christianity, it backfires on them, and that has the reverse effects. and I'm looking forward to this because everywhere where you look, where Christians are being oppressed, they grow even stronger and more powerful. And there's a reason the Bible is the most banned book in the world. It's because of the truths and powers within it. We serve a mighty God, and he will not be mocked or pushed aside. And I can tell you that Action for Canada is committed to proclaiming Canada as a Christian nation and upholding and protecting the foundation of this nation that is built on Judeo-Christian biblical principles. And I can assure you that our guest tonight as well is committed to the same uncompromising spirit, and his testimony will inspire you to rise up and do the same. Because Bill C-9 is one that is meant to silence people like Barry Neufeld, to imprison people like myself and pastors. And it is an age-old tactic from those who are a anti-God government that, as I say, just wants to rule with the authority and have the citizens just oppressed and bowing down to them. And we've been fighting this for 10 years. I've repeatedly said that the Bible promises in Second Chronicles that if we as a nation come together and humble ourselves before the Lord and profess him as king of this nation, of him as leader, and put him back on the throne in Canada, that he promises to come in and heal our land. And I believe that that's something that we've got to take very seriously today. And I can tell you that atheists, agnostics, people from other faiths and religions here are agreeing. The reason people are moving here from other countries is because of the freedom and democracy that was built on our Christian biblical principles. And so that's something worth fighting for. And I really appreciate it that even people that are unbelievers support the campaigns and the strategies that we have moving forward. So with that, again, thank you to everybody who supported Bill, our campaigns against Bill C-9. We're going to keep pushing forward in the new year. And I'm just happy that I could be here tonight to give you this update and say hope isn't lost yet. This government has turned their back on Canada, but that means that the citizens will rise up in support of it, and we outnumber them. We outnumber them. Just remember that. Okay, so Heather, over to you. Would you please introduce Barry?
Tanya, sorry, we actually lost Mr. Neufeld, so we were wondering maybe we could play that video while we could give you a chance to give him a call.
I will do that. Yeah, thanks, Trenzio.
Okay.
So actually, I'll actually say, because I meant to say that. So Heather, before bringing our guest on, we will play a brief video, and then if you will come back on, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tanya.
When they started teaching this in primary school, they were using the genderbread person. That identity is in the head, attraction is in the heart, and sex is in the organs. But the gender ideology has been evolving so fast that they had to come up with a new one, the gender unicorn, and they got this new concept of the sex assigned at birth. In other words, just because a doctor looks at a baby's crotch and decides what sex it is, that doesn't mean it's actually what it really is. In reality, this is totally fake, and it goes against all facts. This is the real gender unicorn. A person who gives in to this is subject to lifelong medicalization. They have brittle bones. There was a 26-year-old girl that had to have a hip replacement because of the damage that the hormones had done to her. It leaves ugly scars. They're sterile. And due to the bottom surgery, there's often wounds that never heal properly. That is the truth. And you've already seen that picture. I became familiar early with Dr. Steve Torlukas, who is a Greek Orthodox dentist in Hamilton, and he took on the Hamilton Wentworth School District for some of this garbage. He fought the battle for 7 years and eventually lost. And he was so disappointed in the lack of enthusiasm by any Christian churches to help him. He said the pathologies of Christian indifference and apathy are bigger threats than the radical secular humanists that surround us. A couple of years ago, I received this in the mail, and I was quite pleased. It came from my Conservative Member of Parliament. I had been nominated as a community hero for Chilliwack Hope. But unfortunately, 2 months later, I got an email from the Conservative Party that I had been kicked out. And that was obviously because they saw this picture of me taken with Derek Sloan.
I saw your thumbs up. So
the one conservative politician that supported us in our opposition to gender ideology. There's a lot of people that keep complaining they want Barry Neufeld to resign, to quit. But I recently received this certificate from the BC School Trustees Association. I'm a lifetime member. The only way they can get rid of me is when I kick the bucket. One of the first challenges to me was I was taken before the BC Human Rights Tribunal, and this is based on the claims of Glenn Hansman that I was dangerous to children. They would really like to put me in jail. I got a kick out of this article, or this meme. But anyways, my opponent is Glenn Hansman. He's a former president of the BC Teachers Federation. And because what he said was so insulting and damning, I sued him for defamation. And he is desperately trying to block my defamation suit. He won at the first round. A recently appointed Supreme Court judge agreed with him that Barry Neufeld is a bad person and he needs to be shut up. But I took it to the BC Court of Appeal, where 3 more experienced judges looked at it and they said, this is a dark day for freedom of speech.
Okay, so Barry is having some technical difficulties. We're having quite a storm, a rainstorm here in BC, and so the internet kicked him off for a bit. So he's trying to get back on. And what I think I will do is I'm just going to give a little bit of an update then on some of the history with Barry in case some of you are unaware. So Trenzio, just let me know when we're having some success here. And I will right now move towards, I'm just going to get my screen set up.
Sounds good, Tanya.
And I'll just share screen now. Okay. Pray for Barry. We would really like to hear from Barry. I was looking so forward to having him on the show tonight. All right, so I'll just share, of course, as I say, Barry's coming on tonight. We just played this clip, and that was back from 2022. And Barry's journey began in 2017. And I would go to town hall meetings and rallies in support of Barry as the school board, trustees, and unions just came out full force attacking him. It was one of the most vicious attacks against an individual at that point in 2017 that I had ever seen. I've mentioned before in the past when, as we were trying to bring awareness to parents about SOGI, because, you know, all of us were coming together and we're like, oh my goodness, what is this sexual orientation, gender identity? And how did they so stealthily put it in the schools? So it started in 2016 where they used almost nearly 12 pilot schools in British Columbia. And then by July of 2017, early July, or actually it was June of 2017, the government had come out, the British Columbia government, the provincial government had come out and put a policy in place that the school boards were responsible for resources. And in British Columbia, SOGI is not curriculum. It is a resource that they've implemented into every subject in math, English, PE, you name it. They had a way of inserting this. And so that was quite shocking to all of us. And then they fast tracked it in September of 2017 into all schools. And so when we would show up at a town hall, there'd maybe be 20 or 25 of us on the inside and all these colorful people on the outside. And like I say, there was an angry mob, very confused, very indoctrinated, manipulated, and they were out to prove their point and defend their position. And so we've come a long way since 2017. But of course, as I'll continue to say, Barry was somebody who was unwilling and uncompromising in this journey. I'm just seeing, I heard a noise. So, okay. Barry's still not on?
Not
No?
yet.
Okay. I'm still trying to connect with him. Maybe the storm has just blown out his internet right now. So we'll just continue because I think we've got enough content regarding Barry to help us out on this. So as Barry ended up finding out, discovering that SOGI 123 was implemented at this time as well. And he decided to take a look at the resource. And as an individual who had worked in corrections and had also been trained in what it looked like to groom children and to indoctrinate them, he had some super major red flags about SOGI 123, and he began to express those. And he had made a couple of posts online. And as I say, I mean, the people behind this, the LGBTQ activists who were behind this, were extremely committed, and they didn't care who they were viciously going to take out in order to, continue their obviously well-planned campaign to go after our children and sexualize and indoctrinate them through this SOGI 123 resource. And so that was the beginning of Barry's journey. As it was mentioned in this video clip, Glenn Hansman was head of the BC Teachers Federation, and he smeared Barry's name and maligned him. And so Barry put forward a human rights complaint against Mr. Hansman, and the whole system in British Columbia that was meant to protect people like Barry has just had the reverse effect because of the activist judges that are in court. And I know for myself, as I was going through this beginnings of the SOGI 123 and seeing what they were doing to children and learn about, like, what the heck is a trans child? We've never ever heard of this before. There was one father that started to become well known here in BC because the activists in a school had gotten a hold of his daughter and had convinced her that she was born in the wrong body and she was going through some depression because her parents were separating, and just that normal teenagery type of stuff of, yeah, it's just a hard time. We all know that. Anybody that's been a teenager and made their way through that, you go through some difficult times, but it's no longer whether or not a child is maybe struggling with friendships, or, there's those kids that end up, you come from elementary school and into high school, and they decide that they're going to go into that party stage. And then there's the kids that were friends and decide that's just not the way I was brought up, I'm not going to do. So all of a sudden they're friendless going into high school and having to find new friends, and at a time that they could lean on their families. And so the problems our kids are facing have changed so dramatically. And now it's a matter of being the cool kids is being in the group that are having, 100 different genders, and where the girls are deciding to shave their hair off and dress like boys. And then already from grade kindergarten to grade 7, the kids have been conditioned to have their allies, which are their friends. So they get to grade 7 and they have the Gay Straight Alliance groups. And then in these private groups, and that's really what it is, because they tell kids not to talk to their parents about what goes on there. And there's many reports of teachers who have been providing binders for girls' breasts, and then trans activists being brought into the school. So with this one particular father, his daughter had a crush on the PE teacher, a male. And of course, that I guess can be a normal thing for young girls to go through. But an activist teacher ended up showing a video about transitioning. And this father came home one day and his daughter had cut all her hair off and it was in the garbage can. And so then next thing you know, the counselors at the school are coaching them to go to a gender dysphoria clinic. And at that point, I guess I don't have to be sharing screen all the way through here, but I've got a couple of other things. And at that point, what had transpired is then they assigned an activist lawyer, and it went before an activist judge, and the lawyer would she would describe herself as she was overweight, and she would describe herself as a fat lesbian lawyer. And this is who this girl, became the lawyer. And the mother was convinced through the gender clinic that did they want a dead daughter or a live son. And so this father fought for years. And then they tried to put these restrictions, media restrictions, that you're not allowed to, media bans, that you can't talk in public about this, you can't talk to the news about it. And they had a real way of covering up the sins of the court and the sins of these people that have come after our kids. And so that father paid a high price. And so here was Barry going through all of this as well, in the background at the level of school board trustee in Chilliwack. And eventually at the next election, he was voted out because of all the hate spewed against him. And Glenn Hansman had a lot to do with smearing his name. And, get to the point, we get to the courts and they rule on the side of Glenn Hansman and say that those were fair comments to say that Barry was a danger around children. Anyways, then that leads to 2022, where Barry's case was going to the Supreme Court of Canada. And they allowed all kinds of witnesses. Actually, Hans is on in attending tonight, and he made this great image. And here was Barry and his lawyer, fighting against the BC Teachers Federation. And Barry was not permitted to have anyone come up and give testimony as to the harms that it was causing children or people like Barry, school board trustees. But the other side was given every opportunity to allow all of these activist groups 5 minutes to provide their testimonies on how they felt that Barry was hateful, SOGI was necessary because it was going to save lives. And that was the display inside of the court. And so EGAL is a well-known, federally funded LGBTQ organization, and with ties to the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals. We know you can recognize the BC Teachers Federation. We have the CCLA here, just so many different queer community. They all had the opportunity to be represented in court. And in the end, of course, they ruled against Barry, but not without an incredible battle in the courts, and it just seemed so overwhelming at the time. I just wanted to bring up, while I have this page, we've got a page that if you go to call to action, and under weekly emails, it goes sketches by Hans. And we've worked on this over the years when we've had special guests on. And this, for instance, was when a father in the interior, a father and mother, his son was going to be charged by the police for assault. And what had happened in this picture, I think reveals that quite well, is that there was this boy that said he identified as a girl. And so he would go into the girls' change rooms. He would look between the cracks of the doors. He would harass the girls. And really, this was sexual harassment and assault. And so these girls would tell their friend about it. And he kept telling this boy to back off and to leave the girls alone. He went to it was in Prince George, I believe, actually. He went to the principal, to the vice principals, and nobody would listen. Nobody wanted to take care of this little pervert coming into the girls' change rooms to protect the girls because they were worried about the backlash from people like Glenn Hansman and the unions. And so they stayed silent. And this is happening in schools across Canada for a decade now under the Liberal government. And so this young man, it was just horrendous for him and his family to go through, because he finally came in and he asked the boy what body parts he had, and if he didn't have the right body parts to get out of the girls' washroom. And then in the schoolyard, this kid had come up to him and he popped him in the nose. And that's why he got charged with assault. I mean, to me, this young man, I mean, it's unbelievable. I look at it as, and this is what I was wanting Barry to talk about tonight, as a call to men. At what other time in history would we allow this to happen to women and girls, where men are in women's sports and taking away their advantages as far as furthering their education and having that paid for? Like, I mean, where would we allow little pervert boys like this, who are obviously needing counseling and not being affirmed in their delusions, in order to come in and assault our girls? I mean, this should have everybody outraged. And then this was the story of Sarah. And Sarah also was, indoctrinated in the schools when a trans activist came into the school and had basically been given this opportunity to speak to the kids and said, if you're uncomfortable in your body, then you are most likely gender dysphoric. And Sarah had not dealt with some childhood abuse, which she later in her 20s had gone on to face. And so her parents, being Christian parents, knew exactly what these crazy activists and the Canadian or the child services would do, is they would come in and take your child away from you. And there's real concerns that are building in Canada and in countries around the world about child protective services. Because, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody at child protective services are pedophiles, but it is well known that if you happen to be one, these are some pretty good positions to be in, to have access to children. And we know at the United Nations, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the group that goes into countries to assist. They were a super high rate of the workers that work for the United Nations are pedophiles or sexually abused women. And so I'm just saying, there is a lot of fear for parents to have child services or the government get involved between you and your child. And this family knew that. So here they are, and they're now convincing Sarah that she's born in the wrong body. And so within a very short period of time, Sarah goes to a gender dysphoria clinic, and she is there within 45 minutes given puberty blockers, and then fast tracked. So that's she's 14 years old at this point, and she's very depressed. So they're giving her antidepressants as well. She's questioning now. It's like, she's 15 now and going towards 6. She's questioning if she's doing the right thing. And what they're doing is then they're prescribing more antidepressants to keep these kids dumbed down and to keep control of them. And this led to the BC government offering her and paying for, with our tax dollars, to have her breasts removed. Her perfectly healthy breasts and her perfectly healthy body removed. They mutilated her body. And the drugs ended up giving her a deeper voice. She grew a full beard. And to move the story forward, she was hardly healed from the breast surgery, and they offered her bottom surgery. And thank God she said no, because that is a horrific, brutal mutilation to our young people's bodies that's transpiring. And we're talking, Nazi, Hitler, World War II kind of mutilation and treatment to our kids that they're trying to tell us to accept and call it normal. And Bill C-9 is trying to shut us up from saying this is wrong. And we're not going to sit back and be silent. I don't care if Bill C-9 passes or not. We have a duty and an obligation to continue to speak the truth. And we will continue to do that. And I want to just mention that when Sarah was offered the breast surgery, she had given testimony to the fact that when they had called her to say, look, we need to make you an appointment, and she was still questioning whether she wanted to do it. And they ended up coming back with, well, we got a long lineup. So, if you miss this opportunity, we can't tell you when you'll be able to feel your true self by having this surgery done. And so she was coerced into and basically exploited into having this surgery. And Sarah speaks for many, many hundreds, if not thousands of other children in Canada that they've been doing this to. And these families are being torn apart. But fast track that a little bit, forward that a little bit to when Sarah was in her 20s. And she was 2 years ago, January, it might be 3 now coming up. And she was sitting in church with her parents, dressed like a boy with a beard. And the pastor it was part of the Pastors Across Canada preaching on Sexuality Sunday. And what is it? Biblical Sexuality Sunday. And the pastor had said one of those verses that Bill C-9 would like to consider hate speech, but he said, transgenderism and homosexuality are an abomination of the Lord. And the Bible does say that. It does say homosexuality is an abomination. And so that's pretty serious. And of course, when you've got a government that's led by LGBTQ activists, you can see why they'd be offended by that verse. It's not hate speech. It's in the best interest of people. God has a perfect design for us. And he calls it out, just like he calls out any other kind of sexual depravity. And, it's not just, but that's what they're focused on because that's what they're mainstreaming here is deviancy. And so Sarah began to realize at that very moment she'd been had. And she went on a journey where she was very depressed. She had considered suicide. Thank God she didn't, because now she has a voice and a testimony to others. But this is what this family went through, and this is what kids are going through. And many that are indoctrinated right now, it's like they're in a cult. And so how does a parent talk to their child? And so if you're going through this, I would welcome you to reach out to Action for Canada, to one of our chapter leaders. And I've got a couple of resources that I highly recommend on our LGBTQ page. And it looks like, it's possible that Barry isn't going to be able to make it on the show. So I may just carry forward. And maybe that's the way things were meant. Maybe there is going to be a parent that's listening tonight who is going through this nightmare. And I'll just finish up with a few other images that Hans had created. And this is basically what it is: breast removal and sterilization. And you don't even want to know what they do to boys as well, like cutting off their penis, and that's irreplaceable. Like you can't reverse that kind of surgery. And that's why we're outright calling it mutilation. And that is why it is an absolute outright lie to say that, do you want a dead daughter or a live son? Do you want a live daughter or a dead son? Like, reverse it. So imagine a parent who has a son that's being, who's, the government is, or whoever is trying to say this to them, whatever activist, and then they go ahead and they go forward with this surgery. So their son now has this bottom surgery done. He's miserable. It's painful. It doesn't work. And now what is happening is there is a much higher rate of suicide. I mean, we can say 1 and 1 equals 2 in this. It makes complete sense that would be the outcome when you put a child through this. And so this is what Barry was fighting from the onset. He saw that this was going to leave children confused, and that it would break down their natural defenses, and that it would open them up to predatory behavior, and that it would open them up to surgeries and mutilation and life-changing medical, I'm not even call them treatments, because they're not, that would forever change their lives, irreversible. And of course, one of the government and the UN's objectives, one of their goals is, of course, to lower the world's population. And when you're sterilizing children en masse, that is obviously going to be an outcome. So I am on the webpage right now. I'm going to go into current issues just so you can follow me along here for a moment. And if you go to political LGBTQ activism, click on that link. And here's the page that we've created. If you happen to be somebody on tonight who is captured by this movement and by this cult, I right now want to encourage you to click on this top link, because there are many, many people. As you know, there is mass detransitioners. You could see it all over social media. People who know now that they have been duped by this system after being indoctrinated in the school system, and they're looking for answers. And truly, the only way that you're going to be fully restored in the best way possible is from finding Jesus and knowing that he loves you so much, and that in the midst of storms, he can bring you joy, and that there is a community of people that actually would be here for you to help you through the journey and back to restoration, to being restored. And there's people's testimonies on this page on how they recovered and went through this. And then there's also the Jesus film. And I would encourage you, it's in many, many different languages. You have lots of options here of everything that we've provided. There's some verses on this page as well, a prayer of salvation. But you aren't going to be able to do this on your own. And all of that anxiety and all of the confusion that you're feeling is not going to stop until you come to terms with the decisions that you've made. So you can reach out to us as well at call2@actionforcanada.com if you're in need of some help. So on this page, this is a must watch when parents come to me. If you're a parent tonight and you are figuring out, man, my child has just come home, they're in grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, whatever grade they're in, grade 5, and they're now identifying as the opposite sex, then I'm asking you to watch this video. Now, this refers to the SOGI toolkit for teachers, and that's in British Columbia. SOGI is also in Alberta, so that would apply. But this applies to whatever resource they are implementing in the school systems across the country. Like I said, it's Win Sex Ed in Ontario, Back to Basics in Nova Scotia. Each province has maybe a different name for it, but underlying it all is the comprehensive sexuality education. And the SOGI toolkit walks you through from kindergarten to grade 6 of how they are planting these ideas in children's minds, how they're introducing books that show same-sex families. Then they move that along to introducing the pronouns and genders, and just the slick, sly, stealthy way that they introduce this to small children and exploit their innocence. All of this while you're working. Maybe you're working 2 jobs. Right? The whole family is doing their best to survive and put food on the table and pay the rent or the mortgage. This is what's going on in the classrooms, except where there's teachers. And man, do we love you, teachers. Don't you dare retire, and don't you dare step down from these roles, because we need you there protecting children. There are teachers who refuse to present this information to the children. But there are many, many activists there, or there are many who cowardly just go along with it because they don't want to lose their jobs. And there are reports that there are leads in school who will go into classrooms to make sure that teachers are presenting this information to their children. So, of course, we have been for years saying 911, get your kids out of school. And if you look back on the current issues page, we've got Homeschool Revolution. You just click on that, and we have vetted incredible homeschool associations across Canada who don't support any of this. You would just go and find your homeschool association in your province and then just get started. We're calling on grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles and communities to work together to pull children out of the education system and homeschool. And there has been a mass exodus in Canada and in the United States, and it's really, really picking up. And that's why the government is trying to push even harder the deviancy, because they are losing control of the narrative. And that is thanks to groups like Action for Canada and people like Barry Neufeld, who didn't care about the backlash, who would take the backlash because we believe that people needed to stand up on behalf of our children. And now that you're aware, you can't turn a blind eye. You can't turn away from this. You shouldn't be just dropping your children off at school and assuming that your teacher is not indoctrinating them. And you need to get involved with what's being presented to your child in class. There are committees, parent committees filled with activists on them who are being given the power and authority to decide what books will be used, say, for instance, during creative arts through English classes. And if you're not aware of it, we've got something that will be coming up within the near future. I'm just diving a little deeper into it. And it's a book from 1975. And it seems like, an adventurous type of book, but it is about a man who is, I believe, 104 years old, who meets is it 14-year-old girl? Is it 9-year-old girl? Sorry, I don't remember. Like I say, I'm just looking into it. Meets a young girl and convinces her that to lie to her parents. And, he can, through magical reasons, he can identify as a younger man. And then it falls, for this girl. And it just has a pedophilic undertone. And it's like, holy smokes, that book's from 1975. But so is It's Perfectly Normal, which of course is a book that has exploded in the last decade as parents have become aware. It's like, you're teaching our kids what? There's graphic pictures of sexual acts in cartoon style that kids are being exposed to through It's Perfectly Normal. So we need to be involved with our kids' education, and we need to know what books they're being presented with. And we just encourage you to do that. So that's the first video. I would encourage parents, take a look at what they're doing to your kids in class. They are indoctrinating them bit by bit. They're teaching them allyship, and they're even teaching them to disobey their parents over their allies, over their friends. They are teaching them to turn their backs on their parents. And at the beginning of this, I was talking about Bill C-9. And I'm talking about how this is definitely an attack against Christianity in Canada. And this is an attack against creation, God's perfect creation, making us male and female. But it is also another attack. The underlying attacks is that in the Ten Commandments, one of the verses, and the only one that comes with a promise, is that to honor your parents, to honor your father and mother. And it promises that it will go well with you. And what are they teaching our children to do? They're teaching to be secretive, to lie, to deceive, all in elementary school. And then they get into junior high and high school. And then we wonder why our children are activists on the university grounds supporting Palestine. Is this really, a question? And supporting the trans movement and supporting boys who are annihilating girls in sports? It's a messed up system. But we working together can turn it around. And the United States is clearly an example of how that can be done. Anyways, we would just encourage you to go down. I've created a new parental rights resource, which absolutely affirms what your rights are. You just hand that to your teacher, your principal, the school board trustees, and you're like, hands off my kids. Don't you dare be teaching them this information in the school system. And as you go down, you'll see other information with flyers. I call them truth bombs. You can see that we have the notices of liability on this page along with other resources. Here's the links to the homeschooling and parent webinars and how to identify sexual predators. That was John Euler. We have over like 1.8 million views on one of these videos and 700 or 800,000 on the other. It is really important. It's long, 3 hours, I think 5 hours in total, something like that. It's like going through a university course, but you'll never be sorry for the time you spend going through it so you can identify these individuals. We're fighting against the flags. Now, it's not only going to be the trans flags and LGBTQ flags. It's going to be these terrorist flags, the Palestinian flags. They have no right going up the flagpole. So in the new year, we're going to have campaigns to take back the rainbow for sure as well. And let me just see, because I don't want to miss it. Here is Sarah's interview, the gal that I spoke about. So if you have a child that has been indoctrinated in the system and you're catching this early on, then you watch the video above where I provide the presentation on what your child's being taught. And then you watch Sarah's video as she gives your testimony. And if your child is a teenager and you feel it's age appropriate, have your child watch with you, because this is a look at their future if you don't stop it right now. And this was Sarah, when that's what she looked like when she went to church that day in January and realized she'd been completely had. And this is beautiful Sarah as she's been restored and God is healing her. But it's a long, difficult journey. And then this was the WHO standard for sexuality education. There's also WPATH, and I was really happy to see, I mean, Florida is knocking it out of the park as far as bills are concerned right now. One, they just ended up designating the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as terrorist organizations. That's the second state now after Texas. Let's hear woo-ha! And but they're also going after WPATH and a couple of other organizations for their criminal activity in mutilating children's bodies and knowing that the WPATH treatments were causing harm to children. So I'm super excited about that. I would have had the news reports up and ready for you had I known that I'd be doing a presentation tonight, and I'll be wrapping it up pretty soon. But I maybe, like I say, we're going to have Barry back on. I'm assuming that for sure he lost his internet and the power has probably gone out, but precious Barry has for sure been on the front line fighting for our children. If you wanted to get a look at what comprehensive sexuality is in a nutshell, this video is excellent. It's about 10 or 15 minutes long. I've done previous Empower Hours where I go over all of this material, and those videos are at the top of the top of the page. Here's WPATH. I will for sure be adding the new report from Florida. I should add that to the top. These people have to be held to account. These are wicked, evil, sexual, deviant people who, for some reason, can't live as adults in their own deviant sexuality, that in somehow to justify it, they need everybody else to support their delusions and their wickedness. And they know adults would not support them, so why not go after our children? And that's where I feel, and why I feel, that this is taking place and that these people were very well organized. And so I'll just stop sharing screen. If anybody had any questions that you wanted to throw in the chat, I could do that right now and take an opportunity to do it. But as we've been going through this battle over Bill C-9, one of the major things is that the church is not taking a stand. And if you thought they were silent before, where do you think these pastors are going to be on talking about the scriptures that call out sexual deviancy, homosexuality? There's adultery at the same time that is being called out. I mean, marriages are crumbling. Even Christian marriages, 50% end in divorce. And why do you think that is because of the messaging that has come from the government and through the media and through songs, and it's all about you. It's no longer about sacrificing for somebody else. And that's what we need to come to. It's like, if we can come together as a church body across this nation and say, we're not going to comply with Bill C-19. It is in violation of multiple sections of the charter. You know, one more thing, I'm just going to share something else because I think it's important, since I have the floor. So this is, of course, the first round. I say round two because a couple of months ago, we were fighting about, to battle against preserving charitable status for churches. Although I've always said, I don't know where it says in the Bible that churches should have charitable status, but it happens to be that we are a Christian nation, the government should be operating that way. And therefore, because of the amount, it's not that I disagree with it in this fact that the churches offer so much to our communities. They providing counseling to the needy. They provide medical care. They provide food to the hungry. There is so much the church contributes to their communities. And that's a lot of what we covered in Defend Our Churches round one. Didn't know it was going to be round one, but it was round one. And the charitable status never ended up in the budget. So they didn't remove it, but they had something else up their sleeves, of course, with Bill C9. And thus, that is why we call it round two. And of course, it was to an act to amend the criminal code, hate propaganda, hate crime, and access to religious or cultural places. And when you looked deeper into it, of course, you see that it would address scripture. And when I sent this action out, I want always to give you a bite at the beginning of the action because I know everybody's business is busy. So I just give you a quick download, breaking. This is what this bill is about. This is why we're going to do a call to action. We provide you the emails. You would just quickly copy those emails, paste them into your email. You simply click on there, put your postal code in, and you find out who your MP's email is, their phone number, their address, whatever you need. And then as well, we have this amazing list. So sometimes I'll ask you, we'll put an action out like this, say, hey, if you have a bit of extra time, if you would commit to this, it would make a big deal because not to say that all 300 and what is it, 42 or 43 ridings now, it used to be 338. It may not be that there are citizens there that are getting these messages and that these MPs are receiving a little backlash. But if you click on the links that we've created, you can simply pull a whole line down by line, copy it, put it into your email, and send it one batch at a time. And like I say, it is going to take you a little bit of time and commitment, but that way we're assured that every single sitting MP is hearing from Canadians on the issue that's of concern to us. And then you just copy and paste this email, of course, and sign your name to it and send it. You could even take this and put it into a letter and then mail it to your MP. And then you would insist upon them because apparently when you mail a letter, they have to respond. So we encourage you to do that. But we've made very, very solid, good points here about why this bill is illegal. It is criminal. And it truly is in violation. They have to, everything the government does. I mean, if we got elected officials in, like Maxime Bernier, for instance, or Rod Taylor from the Christian Heritage Party, these men would understand that every single bill that was in violation of the Constitution would have to be rescinded. And I can just imagine the list because of what the Liberal Party, originally having a majority, had pumped through. And then as a minority, along with the corrupt NDP, they continued their reign of terror. And now the Bloc Québécois has taken the place of the NDP. I mean, there's just been no break. So we have a lot of work to do. But first, we got to come together and get good people into office. And they've got to be willing to call out the problem. And then this was the follow-up of the call to action, and that's what transpired yesterday. We got it out night before last, and I know that many of you emailed me or texted me to let me know that you took action, and I super appreciate that. But the one thing I wanted to point out is constantly over and over and over again, we're telling these MPs, I don't care if they're Hindus, I don't care if they're Muslims, I don't care who they are, I don't care if they ended up taking an oath on the Quran. That's illegal. That is against our founding documents. They took an oath to the crown, and that means that's to the king. And the king took an oath, the coronation oath. And the king's oath, as much as King Charles did not want to take that oath, his oath was to govern the monarchy under the Protestant, according to the Protestant Christian faith and biblical standards. And so every single MP that is sitting right now is bound by that oath, regardless of what their personal beliefs are. If they're a sitting MP, they've taken an oath and they must uphold the Christian religion in Canada. And I know that's shocking, because we've been told forever we're a secular nation, which is a lie directly, specifically from the pit of hell. Okay, it's not true. And what they're in violation of right now is the freedom of religion and conscience, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, freedom of peaceful assembly and association, and of course, equality rights by targeting Christian speech while bowing to outside pressure. And then I had to make, I want to start bringing this conversation forward before the MPs that it ends up that the Council of Canadian Imams showed up at the meeting last Thursday, and they were arguing that by passing Bill C9, it would criminalize their sermons that might be misinterpreted as promoting hate. Well, how many videos do we have across Canada right now of pastors spewing hate towards anybody? Well, the answer would be zero. How many videos are going viral across Canada, the United States, and around the world of imams in mosques preaching hate towards the non-Muslims, towards us? And so to say that it might be misinterpreted as promoting hate, there is too much of this going on. Islam did not build this nation. Muslims did not build this nation. It was Christian, European, Canadians who built this nation. And therefore, I reiterate that Islam is a foreign political ideology bent on conquest. Any group or individual that adheres to Islamic doctrine has no rightful place at Canada's table. Zero say in our laws, zero influence in our institutions, and zero tolerance from our leaders. And it is long overdue for this matter to be addressed and any and all accommodations cease and desist, such as the federal government allowing workplaces to be disrupted by accommodating Ramadan, an Islamic holiday that celebrates the anniversary of the Battle of Badr, the brutal conquest of non-Muslims. This is what our government is kowtowing to. And this is why it was really important that we address Bill C9 on multiple different levels. And this is why it's incredibly important that I'm going to ask you to click on Canada as a Christian Nation on our document that we've created. Here's the PDF right here on this page, and that you print that off and you send it to your elected official to remind them of their duty and their oath, and that we expect and demand that they are going to start governing accordingly. And then we'll see a real change in Canada. But as long as we buy into the lies, as long as we repeat the lies, as long as we kowtow and bow down to the lies, Canada will not be free. And I believe to the bottom of my heart, otherwise I wouldn't be fighting so hard for this country, that we can be free indeed. Okay. All right. I'll stop sharing screen. Thank you for joining us. Again, I'm so sorry that Barry could not be here tonight. I know he has a good reason, and I will have to set it up in the new year that Barry joins us once again to give his testimony and that we support him. Please pray for Barry. He's still waiting for the decision to come through on the human rights complaint regarding Glenn Hansman. That's been going on for 8 years. It's just unbelievable what they have put this man through, and yet he still stands tall because of his faith. And I know truly that Barry is a man of God and an uncompromising man, and I call on all men across Canada to be nothing less. We need you up here on the front lines with us, protecting the women and the children in this country. All right, so next week we are going to be celebrating our annual Christmas service, and our very own Pastor Dan Vachon is going to be giving the service. And I'm going to be really looking forward to this one because Dan's going to be giving also a special testimony of what he's been through this year. So a story of hope is the theme. And when you hear Dan's story, you will be shocked and amazed. And our Action for Canada family has stood beside Dan. Getting a little emotional right now because we almost lost Dan a couple of times this year, and the Lord has pulled him through. And so for Dan to be given the Christmas service this year and talking about a story of hope, I can't think of anything better. So you will not want to miss it. Be sure to join us next week. The verses for today, I think, is appropriate. Ephesians 5:11-12 says, "Take no part in the worthless deeds of evil and darkness. Instead, expose them. It is shameful even to talk about the things that ungodly people do in secret. And that's why we're not going to be silent about this. And we're certainly not going to allow them to fill our children's with all of this dark and shamefulness, because that's how they control people, right? They break down their spirit. They introduce them to things that cause them shame. And when you're living a life of shame, I can tell you, you're not on the front line fighting. And so we just want to make sure if you're living a life of shame right now, you need to confess before Jesus. And you need to make your life right, and you need to be free. And then you need to get on the front line with us and join us in this battle. And you can use your testimony. You have an amazing testimony. And the final verse, I'm going to use the same one I did last week, because I think after a week like this week has been so far, and it's only Wednesday, we've been battling hard over the Bill C-9 and other things, but it says, let us not become weary in doing good, but I'm going to do that one again. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And that's Galatians 6:9. So God bless you, and God bless Canada.
In times of financial uncertainty, securing your wealth is more important than ever. With inflation, market instability, and economic challenges, many Canadians are turning to one timeless strategy: precious metals. Gold and silver have historically retained their value, offering a hedge against economic turmoil and a safeguard for your assets. If you're looking to invest, there's good news for members of Action for Canada. We're proud to announce our partnership with Steve Merrill of Sun City Silver. Steve is not only a friend of the Freedom Movement, but he's also offering Action for Canada members exclusive access to some of the best pricing in Canada. Thanks to his extensive client base and affiliation with Silver Gold Bull, you can now secure your precious metals at incredible rates. Silver Gold Bull is a trusted Canadian leader with live pricing available 24/7 and nearly 400,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. When you purchase through Steve, you're not only investing in your future, you're also supporting the Freedom Movement, as a percentage of each sale helps support Action for Canada. Plus, there's a bonus. If you place an order of $5,000 or more, you'll receive a 1-ounce pure silver bullet, a unique and valuable addition to your collection. And if you refer someone who places a $5,000 order, you'll get another silver bullet as a thank you. To get started, visit actionforcanada.com/purchasing-precious-metals/. Remember, your decisions are your own, and we recommend doing your own research before making any investment. But with Steve Merrill's guidance and our partnership, you'll be on the right path to securing your future. Secure your assets, protect your future, support the movement. Visit us today to learn more.
chapters across the nation. We are going to be in every town and every city, and we are going to build communities within these communities of like-minded people who are actually going to care for one another again and love on each other and give each other the help when they're down. We are going to use the teams and the people that build within chapters to support our businesses. The government's actions are completely 100% unlawful. Judgment will again be found on justice, and those with virtuous hearts will pursue it. You have a virtuous heart if you are here today pursuing freedom and righteousness.